Out beyond Neptune, past the last planet most of us can name, there is a world that drifts alone in the dark. No sunrise touches it in any way we would recognize. No warmth reaches it. From that distance, the sun itself is only the brightest star in a black sky. And somewhere out there, in that frozen silence, something was waiting to be found. Something that would quietly rewrite what we thought we knew about the little world called Pluto. For most of the 20th century, Pluto was considered a lonely outsider. Discovered in 1930, it sat billions of kilometers from the sun, small, dim, and difficult to study. For decades, astronomers pictured it as a solitary ice ball, drifting through the darkness with nothing but empty space around it. But the more scientists studied Pluto, the less that picture made sense. Its orbit was strange. Its size was smaller than expected. And in 1978, astronomers discovered that Pluto was not even alone. It had a companion, a large moon named Charon, nearly half its size. If Pluto could hide a moon like that for almost 50 years, what else might be hiding out there with it? That question would not go away. Charon explained some of Pluto's oddities, but not all of them. Something in the data still felt unfinished, as if the Pluto system had more to it than a single world and a single moon. Astronomers began to suspect that somewhere in that darkness, smaller objects might be orbiting undetected, too faint, too small, too easily lost in Pluto's glare to ever have been seen. To find out, scientists needed something far more sensitive than any ground-based telescope. They needed to look from above the blur of Earth's atmosphere entirely. They needed the Hubble Space Telescope. Detecting a possible moon around Pluto is not like spotting a planet. These would be tiny worlds, only a few kilometers across, reflecting almost no sunlight at a distance of billions of kilometers, drowned out by the brightness of Pluto and Charon nearby. It was, in some ways, like trying to spot a firefly next to a spotlight from the other side of a football field. If anything was out there, Hubble was the only instrument with a chance of finding it. And then it did. In 2005, Hubble's images revealed something astronomers had not expected. Two faint points of light near Pluto, far beyond Charon. A single image could not prove they belonged there. A background star or a chance object could look identical by coincidence. So, astronomers returned to the same field again and again, and watched those points move in lockstep with Pluto, rather than drift independently against the star field behind them. The telltale signature of something gravitationally bound in orbit, not something merely passing through the frame. They were small, they were dim, and they were real. Pluto, it turned out, was not a two-world system at all. It had at least two more moons, later named Nix and Hydra. The discovery was startling. If two more moons had gone unnoticed for so long, it meant the Pluto system was more crowded and more complicated than anyone had assumed. Nix and Hydra were not just new names on a list. They were evidence that this distant world had a genuine family orbiting around it, hidden until Hubble finally had the sensitivity to see it. That discovery should have closed the case. It did not. Astronomers kept watching Pluto because the system still did not feel fully explained. And the deeper they looked, the stranger it became. In the years that followed, Hubble found 2 more moons circling Pluto, Kerberos and Styx, smaller and fainter than even Nix and Hydra. Finding them meant pushing the telescope to its limit, stacking dozens of long exposures on top of one another, just to coax out a signal too faint for any single image to catch. In barely more than half a decade, Pluto had gone from a single companion to a total of 5 known moons. 1 planet, 1 moon, then 3 more. Pluto was no longer an isolated ice ball at the edge of the solar system. It was beginning to look like a miniature planetary system in its own right. These moons were not just a curiosity. Their orbits held clues. Charon is so large next to Pluto, roughly half its diameter, that the two do not behave like an ordinary planet and moon. Instead, they both swing around a shared center of gravity that sits in the empty space between them. And Nix, Hydra, Kerberos, and Styx all orbit that same shared center too, in surprisingly organized, closely timed patterns. Their orbital periods fall close to simple whole number ratios of one another, the kind of tidy spacing that does not arise by chance, but settles into place only after a long stretch of gravitational shuffling. Some scientists believe the entire family, Charon included, may trace back to a single violent event deep in Pluto's past, an ancient collision, one massive impact that shattered debris into a ring around Pluto, debris that gradually clumped together into the moons we see today. It remains the leading hypothesis rather than a settled fact. But the neat, resonant spacing of the small moons is exactly the kind of fingerprint that idea would predict. If true, Pluto's moons are not just companions. They are survivors, fragments of a story written billions of years ago. Hubble had found the pieces, but it could only see so much from so far away. To understand what these worlds actually looked like, something had to go there. That something was NASA's New Horizons spacecraft, launched toward a target that had never been visited by any human-made object. In July 2015, after a 9-year journey across the solar system, New Horizons finally reached Pluto, and for the first time, humanity saw this distant world not as a smudge of light, but as an actual place. What it found was staggering. Dominating one hemisphere was an enormous, pale, heart-shaped region, Tombaugh Regio, visible even from a distance. Its western lobe, Sputnik Planitia, turned out to be a vast glacier of nitrogen ice, roughly 1,000 kilometers across, and unlike anything scientists had expected on a world this cold and this far from the sun. Its surface was broken into wide, polygonal cells, evidence that the nitrogen ice underneath is slowly convecting, rising and sinking in a churn not unlike a lava lamp, a sign that Pluto is still geologically active today, billions of years after it formed. Some researchers have proposed that this lobe formed from a slow, glancing impact, a low-speed collision that struck Pluto at an angle and spread outward like a splash frozen in place. It's still an active area of study, Not a settled answer, but it adds one more layer to a surface far more dynamic than anyone predicted for a frozen world at the edge of the solar system. And Pluto was not the only surprise. Charon, the moon discovered back in 1978, revealed enormous tectonic cracks running along its equator. Features consistent with an ancient ocean that once existed beneath its icy shell. Water expands as it freezes, rather than contracting like most materials. So as that ocean froze solid over time, it would have pushed outward and split Charon's crust from within, leaving these fractures as a kind of fossil record of the moon cooling from the inside out. Even Nix and Hydra, the moon's Hubble had only seen as faint points of light, turned out to have irregular, elongated shapes, and instead of spinning steadily like most moons, they tumble chaotically, knocked off any stable rotation by the constantly shifting gravitational pull of the massive Pluto-Charon pair they orbit so closely. Put it all together, and the story becomes clear. Hubble did not simply discover 4 small moons circling a dwarf planet. It uncovered evidence of an entire system shaped by collision, evolution, and time, a natural laboratory for understanding how small worlds and their moons form and change across billions of years. Every orbit, every icy fragment, is a fragment of the solar system's early history, preserved in the deep freeze of the outer dark. And yet, even now, the story may not be finished. Beyond Pluto, the darkness stretches on, filled with countless smaller, fainter objects that current telescopes still cannot fully resolve. If a telescope as powerful as Hubble could uncover 4 hidden moons around a single world, it raises an unavoidable question. What else is still out there, too small, too dim, too distant for us to see, waiting, like Pluto once was, to be found? For most of the 20th century, Pluto was seen as a lonely, frozen outsider at the edge of everything. We now know that was never the whole truth. It was surrounded by a family of moons, hidden in the dark, waiting for the right eyes to find them. Hubble found that family. New Horizons let us finally see their faces. But if Pluto could keep a secret like that for decades, the darkness beyond it may be keeping secrets still.